Hello friends, welcome to a new lecture today on MCQs of stomach. So question number 1. Gastrojejunostomy is an example of. We will see the options. Right. Is it clean contaminated wound, clean uncontaminated wound, unclean contaminated wound, or unclean uncontaminated wound? See, gastrojejunostomy is an example of clean contaminated wound. See, what is clean wound? Clean wound is an uninfected wound where GIT, respiratory system, genital tract and renal tract are not open. If GIT, respiratory system, genital tract and renal tract are not opened, then we call it as clean wound. When do we call it as clean contaminated wound? We call something as clean contaminated wound if above tracts are entered but controlled condition. But it is entered under controlled condition, then we call it as clean contaminated wound. So in gastrojejunostomy, GIT is entered and this entry is controlled. So this is clean contaminated wound. What is contaminated wound? Contaminated, unclean contaminated wound is unclean uncontaminated wound, or contaminated wound is gross spillage of GIT structures. Then dirty is old traumatic wounds are called as dirty wounds. Next, question number 2. Dumping syndrome is characterized by all except. We'll see the options. Colic, dumping syndrome has abdominal pain. It is associated with tremors and giddiness. True. Hyperglycemia. Actually, in dumping syndrome, there is hypoglycemia is seen rather than hyperglycemia because of increased production of insulin. See, once when the patient with gastrectomy eats food, then with high carbohydrate diet, the carbohydrates in the glucose present in the bowel is absorbed into the blood. Then in the blood, insulin is released at once because of high glucose level, and this insulin will cause uptake of glucose into the cells, and thus within a few minutes you can see hypoglycemia developing in the individual due to increased insulin release. Then epigastric fullness is present in this dumping syndrome. Okay. Next, if you see the question 3, which of the following plays a major role in development of dumping syndrome? In development of dumping syndrome, which of the following plays a major role? Vagolytic mechanism, small stomach, excessive food, all these are not true. True is large volume of hyperosmotic fluid in intestine. Whenever there is large volume of hyperosmotic fluid in intestine, then this dumping syndrome develops. Question number 4. Bleed risk criteria include all except. There is something called as bleed risk classification. Bleed risk classification is to predict the risk of rebleeding and mortality in upper GI bleeding. So we have 5 criteria for bleed risk classification. That is, if the bleeding is ongoing, low blood pressure, that is systolic blood pressure less than 100 millimeters of Hg, elevated prothrombin time more than 1.2 times the control value, established mental alteration, and diseases comorbidly seen with instability. So if you see in bleed risk criteria, first, ongoing bleeding, low urine output. This is true. Low urine output. Only low urine output is not correct. There should be ongoing bleeding is important. So B is wrong. C, systolic blood pressure less than 100 millimeters of Hg. That is true. Altered mental status is also true. So low urine output is not the criteria. Then question number 5. In case of upper GI bleeding, all are true about endoscopy except. We'll see the options. Decreased transfusion requirement. Yes, if you do endoscopy and try to control the bleeding, early endoscopy should be done within 24 hours even in stable cases. And once you have done early endoscopy, then you can decrease the transfusion requirement, as if there is any bleeding, you can try to give therapeutic endoscopy. That is, you can treat the patient endoscopically. Second option is it leads to early discharge of the patient. True. It can detect causes in all cases. False. Endoscopy cannot identify the source in all cases, because in some cases, because of massive hemorrhage or ongoing bleeding, there can be impairment of vision in endoscope. So we do not identify the source always in endoscopy. Best tool for localizing bleeding, option D, true. It is the best source for localizing bleeding. Next, question 6. Which of the following is incorrect statement regarding GI bleeding? So let us see the statements. Sensitivity of angiography for detecting GI bleeding in about 10 to 20% is low as compared to nuclear imaging. True. Sensitivity of angiography in detecting GI bleeding is about 10 to 20% low as compared to nuclear imaging. That is true. Angiography can image bleeding at the rate of 0.05 to 0.1 ml per minute or less. False. Actually, angiography can image bleeding at the rate of 0.5 to 1 ml per minute. Okay, at the rate of 0.5 to 1 ml per minute, not 0.05 to 1. So this is false statement. Then 99M technetium RBC scan will image bleeding at the rate of 0.05 to 0.1 ml per minute. That is true. Normal angiography only 0.5 to 1 ml, whereas technetium RBC scan can identify bleeding at the rate of 0.05 to 0.1% ml per minute. Then option D, angiography will detect bleeding only if extravasation is occurring during the ingestion of contrast. True. Then question number 6. A male executive 50 years of age is seen in casualty with hypotension and hematemesis. There is previous history of alcohol intake of 100 ml daily. The blood loss is around 2 liters. Most probable diagnosis is. Look, here the patient is in his 50s with hypotension and hematemesis, alcohol intake. So this is some type of bleeding. So we will see the options. Okay, number 1, gastritis. Gastritis, rarely there will be bleeding. Duodenal ulcer, yes, duodenal ulcer. Hematemesis, bleeding of duodenal ulcer is common. Mallory V stare. See, alcohol also is a hint for Mallory V stare, but the problem here in Mallory V stare is there will be retching and there will be vomiting prior, and later because of excessive vomiting there will be hematemesis. But in this patient there is no history of vomiting, so Mallory V stare is not the diagnosis. Esophageal varices. See, in esophageal varices the patient can have hypertension, okay, and And one more important thing is, according to Sabiston, around 80% of bleeding cases are due to peptic ulcer disease. Most common, if you see, it can be esophageal varices also according to the question, but if you see the most common cause of bleeding or upper GI bleed, the most common cause is ulcer, peptic ulcer disease. And even in alcoholics, ulcer is the predominant cause of upper GI bleed. And varices can also be seen, but there are only 10% of alcoholics develop cirrhosis, and among them only 1/3 of cirrhotic patients develop varices. So esophageal varices is not common. So taking common thing into consideration, duodenal ulcer is the answer for this question. Then question 7. A 42-year-old company executive presents with sudden upper GI bleed of bright red blood with no significant previous history. The diagnosis is, here there is just upper GI bleeding, no other history. Upper GI bleeding, if you see the causes, it can be due to esophageal varices or ulcer or gastritis or gastric erosion. But in this case, we select duodenal ulcer taking commonness into consideration. Among all this, the most common cause of upper GI bleeding is duodenal ulcer. So duodenal ulcer will be the answer. Then, next question, 9. Which of the following management procedures of acute upper GI bleed should possibly be avoided? Which of the following management procedures of acute upper GI bleed should be avoided? So first, if you see the options, IV vasopressin, IV beta blockers, endoscopic sclerotherapy, and balloon tamponade. IV vasopressin can be given for upper GI bleeding, especially for varices. Endoscopic sclerotherapy and balloon tamponade are the treatment procedures for arresting bleeding varices. Among both, banding is most, best actually. So IV beta blockers is not the procedure for acute, is not used for acute upper GI bleeding. Thank you guys for watching my lecture. Thank you.